right now we shall continue, I think, this row, how can we prevent? What can we do and what kind of problems, what kind of challenges we have? I will speak about the challenges in the context of responsibility to protect, of this concept, and my friend will focus more what we wish to do in the field in Europe, in the European Union. Within the Budapest Center for the International Prevention of Genocide and Mass Atrocities, we try to contribute to the international efforts aimed at preventing the crime of crimes and other mass atrocities, and we assess situations through the lens of genocide and mass atrocities prevention and attempt to propose concrete measures for responding to the threats. The 2005 World Summit, where the heads of and the state and the government unanimously affirmed that each individual state has the responsibility to protect its population from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity, could be a milestone in the struggle to prevent genocide and mass atrocities. And no doubt that for the last years, the international community has progressed in implementing the concept. That was also confirmed by the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in September last year when he said our debates are about how, not whether to implement the responsibility to protect, and no government questions the principle. We acknowledging the equal importance of the three pillars set for the implementation of the R2P, and we emphasize its preventive ambitions. For the implementation of the R2P, we need to deploy a wide array of response tools in a tailored and flexible manner, with military intervention being the last resort. Unfortunately, the issue of military intervention has come to the forefront again regarding the situations in Libya and Syria. And just to remind you, since March last year, the world is following the events in Syria, which developed from peaceful demonstrations suppressed by security forces to an armed uprising and a civil war. And according to the recent estimates, more than 40,000 people have been killed, half of them civilians. The death toll includes about 20,000 combatants. There are up to 2,250 opposition protesters, 1,000 government officials, up to 28,000 people have been reported missing. So including civilians, according to the UN, about 1.2 million Syrians have been displaced within the country, and hundreds of thousands have fled to neighboring countries. So these are very, very grave facts. And the question is, what has the international community done so far? When we look at it, then we see that the Arab League, the EU, and the UN have condemned the violence repeatedly. The US and other governments called for the resignation of Assad. Arab League suspended the membership of Syria. The EU and individual countries established sanctions. So the Security Council of the UN supported the peace plan of Special Envoy Kofi Annan, but who had to suspend the related observer mission. We could continue this, but what does this tell us about the R2P? Much of the blame for the perceived inaction, because we were not able to prevent those victims. What we have done? What could we do? And much of the blame for the perceived inaction of the international community was focused on the fallout of the intervention in Libya. In fact, the UN Security Council member states expressed their discontent with the way NATO implemented the mandates to protect civilians. And Brazil, just last year, attempted to capture the concerns of member states and propose the framework of a responsibility while protecting. We think, however, that there are some ways to go deeper and to engage, to launch a detailed discussion. And we think I just have had hit 5 points, what I just will list for you, what we wish, what we think would be necessary to do otherwise in order to really make this implementation, the response, more effective than before. So first of all, I think that we have to the point is that the international community may overcome its diverse interests and unite behind a single course of action if defined by a continuum of steps, including military activity in support of humanitarian and other efforts. A threat of coercive military response, military measures is required by the need for escalation, and this is required, which requires a threat. So we can say right at the beginning that by taking the military option off the table at the outset, R2P could not have been applied as envisaged. The other point is that, it is clear from history that R2P is limited to the exceptional events similar to Rwanda and Srebrenica, and what we know should be called genocide before we get into the legal discussions. There is no agreement on criteria, and this is the point, that we think there happened something, but we are not able to say for the policymakers that yes, happened genocide, yes, please do something, because we don't have the clear criteria for that. So we need to do more in that field. There have been made useful attempts to propose early warning criteria for such exceptional situations, but we must admit that they have not been convincing to make states start action in Darfur, or even now in Syria. If we want to align the member states, because this is the problem, how to unite member states to generate action on their side, then we have to make clear that all activities of ours, preventive activities, must be limited to prevent or halt mass atrocities. So regime change, access to natural resources, regional or national security interests must be clearly dismissed as objectives. Of course, it's difficult, and difficult to communicate to the military people, to the political opposition, and Libya, that was a lecture from Libya, and Libya taught as well that mass atrocity operations following the same pattern as previous military intervention undermine the progress we have made with the agreement on R2P. So we have to take care of with the military interventions, and this is the next and last but one point on my side. Discussion on the development of such tools did not really make progress for the last years. There have been different reviews of the UN capacities in the US, the Genocide Prevention Task Force, our ongoing efforts in the European Union also says that, but are focused on this, but still we have very little to propose when it comes to designing actions, let's say so, towards Syria. And instead of making, designing tools, we see that different actors right now apply different measures, apply different approaches. So without having the clear strategy, what should be done, of course, there are some, and there is some unity that Assad had to resign, but that is not enough to handle the situation. My last point is, which is a kind of lessons learned for us, or a kind of aim, that the development of these response strategies based on the R2P requires information and analysis tailored to the particular needs of mass atrocity prevention. We would need information on particular risk factors and the analysis of actors, bystanders, victims. We had to know their interests, their motivations, perceptions. What we have now, for the time being, we have a lot of information about the victims, about the description of human rights violations, potential war crimes, but for the application of R2P, that is not enough. So there have also been a few attempts to collect and provide specific information, but there seems to be very limited capacity and knowledge within government and among civil society how to do that. What can we do in this respect? So for many, even the mass atrocity prevention as such is still considered a byproduct of conflict prevention, protection of civilians and human rights protection. We need to turn that corner if we want to prevent really mass atrocities. So our center, the Budapest Center, argues for applying the proper mass atrocity lens, because that's what we need when analyzing a situation. And through such an approach, it is possible to, in our view, adequately analyze the situation and design the necessary options for preventive actions. We must set clearly the criteria and the rules for introducing an agreed specific international mechanism to launch timely and tailored actions in cause of these mass atrocities crimes, where the possibility of political bargaining, which is going on permanently, is practically reduced to a minimum. So I don't know how clear was what I said to you in that it was a rather detailed description of what we wish to do, what we see as problems. If it's not clear, then probably you will have time to pose questions. But let me complement. Let Enzo complement these views. How the whole situation looks from the European Union point of view. Thank you very much.
Well, I would say that, first of all, it is rather difficult to speak after Rebecca, I think, either for György or for me. Of course, I did prepare a speech, but I think that we have just few minutes, and in those few minutes, I just would like to raise 2 or 3 points that I think are essential and that actually link what György was saying about the Budapest Center activities and actually what Rebecca inspired us. And this is the European Union framework. I mean, you've been speaking a lot about the international dimension, and you touched upon an experience that is the one of Darfur that I lived myself. I was living in Darfur between 2003 and 2004. I was in a mission with Mukesh Kapila when we went to Niala to see that, and since then I was an expert in Sudan working on something completely different. That was the IDP rehabilitation and repatriation in the context of the CPA agreement between North and South Sudan, and suddenly I entered into another word that was genocide. It did touch me a lot. It did push me a lot into thinking that the creation of a Budapest Center or a Center for the Prevention of Genocide and Mass Atrocities was really needed, because actually we all know, as you mentioned as well, that the convention is spurious in terms of institutional background. We have a convention that actually did not urge for anything like an institution to take care of the implementation of the convention itself. And so we actually, thanks to civil society, we got into the setting up of the ICC, which I think that is tremendously important. And maybe to counteract on what you said, I think that it's true what you said about the black skin that is judged at the ICC. But the argument, also speaking with Moreno Campo for many years, is that that's the achievement of Africa. That the Africans have asked themselves that they wanted their own leaders to be pursued by the ICC. We do know that the ICC is complementary, it's not priority as what instead was the court of Yugoslavia, or where the courts are in Rwanda. Backing on Africa, just let me point out something that I think that is a true achievement and that links us to the whole concept of the responsibility to protect. That is the fact that on the 6th of December, we seen and experienced the adoption of the very first convention on the protection of the IDPs. The IDPs, the internally displaced persons, are one of the most targeted groups that deal with genocide issues and with R2P crimes in general. The fact that we did not have any convention, any rule on their protection was something that was allowing a lot international governments to pursue them or to mistreat them. I do believe in the fact, and that's maybe why I'm a professor of international law as well, I do believe in laws, I do believe in regulations, I do believe in the fact that we do have, we can see the world as a big game. I mean, is the game? Is a game. And the rules of the games are the international legal treaties. One of them just came to power and is an experiment that came from Africa, as the concept of responsibility to protect came from Africa. And actually, the two concepts came from the same person, that is Francis Deng, which I think that, I mean, paying a tribute to the fact that he really did move forward the whole concept of both of the responsibility to protect, but